Hello, hello. Hope you are all doing great. My name is Danae Wolf. I am a financial clarity coach and a profit strategist, which means that I help entrepreneurs like you increase your profits and decrease your stress simply by taking control over the money in your business and stopping allowing it to control you. I really believe that if you don't know what's going on in your bank account, you don't know what's going on in your business. But I also believe that it can be really difficult to understand what's going on in your bank account. The reality is that business finances can be really complicated. So, my entire goal on my tiny corner of the internet here is to really take those complex subjects and just break them down and make them really easy to digest. So we are live streaming this today into my Profit Factor Facebook group, my YouTube channel, The Profit Factor, my business Facebook group, The Chic CFO, and also I know that some of you are more visual learners and some are more audio. So I also go ahead and repurpose the audio and put this onto Apple Podcasts and transcribe it into a blog. We are all about hashtag repurposing here at the Chic CFO. So there will be plenty of ways for you guys to dive into this material. Now, I'm super excited about today's topic because it's something I feel really strongly about. And it's interesting because I always post about the topic that I'm going to be talking about a couple of days in advance, just so that you guys can know what to expect on the live training, because we always do our live trainings on Wednesdays. And this is the first topic that I've introduced, and I've gotten some members of the community who posted and said they quote unquote respectfully disagree with what I'm going to be talking about today. And I thought that was interesting because I've usually just always gotten a resounding like, hell yes, I agree. And this is the first time I've gotten any pushback on a topic. So if you guys are listening, if you're watching live, go ahead and let me know in the comments. If you are watching the replay, please do hashtag replay. It's really going to help me with the algorithms. But also in the comments, let me know, do you agree or do you respectfully disagree, which is what some people were saying. So today's topic is why simplicity is the key to profitability. That is what we are going to be diving into today. And it's something that I just see as a really big problem in the entrepreneurial community. I really come from a place, I'm sure you guys have heard this before, KISS, right? KISS, keep it simple and sexy. That is really the way I not just run my business, but run my life. And I want to explain why. I just believe when it comes to human habits and human behavior, the more complicated and complex something is, the less likely we are to stick to it. So if you guys follow me, you love a good analogy. So I want to talk about dieting. So if you guys jump on a diet that is extremely complex, all right, I'm talking something that it takes 2 hours to cook the recipe. It's difficult to find the ingredients in the recipes. You have to drive an hour away to a different specialty grocery store, right? If it's a very complicated process for you to be on this diet, I believe you are less likely to stick to it. That is just to my core, foundational belief of basic human behavior. Now, I know from the comments that some of you guys respectfully disagree with that, and that's fine. And like I said, I encourage conversation as long as we keep the respectful part, right? I don't want anybody, getting into arguments in the comments here, but let me know what you guys think about that. But that is just something that I find to be true. I think that a lot of times what happens, again, just another one of my beliefs of human behavior, I think that we sometimes think it has to be complicated in order to be effective. All right. So I'm going to repeat that because I want to make sure everybody's understanding what I'm saying. I think that human nature, we tend to believe that something needs to be complicated in order for it to be effective. And I believe that one of the best ways to ensure efficacy is to be consistent. And I believe that if something is complicated, you're not going to be able to be consistent. So while that, taking it back to the analogy, while that complicated diet might really be a great way to see results, if you're not consistent with it, you're not going to get the results anyways. So I'm taking that idea and my, foundational beliefs of human nature and applying it to business. Okay. I think that a lot of times entrepreneurs come from this place of we need a really complicated, complex system in order for it to be effective. And I think you guys see this a lot in your business. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've sat down with an entrepreneur and they show me one of their workflows, right? So, workflows is basically a fancy word for a process in your business. So, maybe the entrepreneur is showing me, hey, this is my hiring process, right? And I go through and it's 32 steps. And I take one look at it because I'm an outsider, right? So it's a fresh set of eyes. And I'm like, hey, you can literally eliminate steps 2 through 10 by using this app, right? And the entrepreneur is like, oh, I didn't think about that. I thought I had to this and that. And again, it stems from this mindset issue of it needs to be complicated in order to be effective. And I really want you guys to know that doesn't work. That 32-step process that you have in your business, it might work, but you are more likely to lose consistency, in which case it's not going to work. You are more likely to make mistakes, right? In which case it's also not going to work. So when we come back to habits, right, we want to keep it simple. So that's really the baseline of what I am speaking today. And again, I'd love to know in the comments what you guys think. Do you feel like, oh, I need something to be a really complicated, intricate process because then I feel like I'm going to get the effects? And when you do that, when you implicate or when you implement a very complicated process in your business, do you find that you're consistent with it? I can tell you there's a lot of things that I've heard from quote unquote gurus that are very complicated that I've tried to put in my business. And I had to give myself a reality check and say, hey, maybe this is very effective, but at the end of the day, my ass isn't doing it. I don't have time for it. It's not sparking joy. It's too many steps. It's too complicated. How do I simplify? And what I want you guys to understand is accounting is complicated. And I'm sure most of you are already aware of that. Accounting is complicated. Business is hard enough. We don't need to add to it, right? I'm sure you guys have heard the saying before, what's the difference between a winner and a loser, right? The winner didn't quit. So, AKA, the winner remains consistent, all right? Entrepreneurship, this is you have to be in it for the long haul, right? There's not this just short-term instant success. And if you've got that, share it in the comments. We'd love to learn from you. But for the most part, right, you've got to be in this for the long haul. This is a long game. And the way that you are going to succeed is to remain consistent. And the best way to do that is to keep it simple. When you are stepping into the process of organizing your small business finances, if you're watching this video, you're probably already a little bit overwhelmed, right? I can't imagine that small business finances come easy to you and you are on the internet looking for tips and tricks, right? So it's probably something where it doesn't come easy to you. You probably didn't study accounting in school. So we're already dealing with something that is extremely complex and complicated. We don't want to aggravate that, right? We want to keep it simple. And a lot of times with small business finances, I will see an entrepreneur say, oh, I need to save receipts, right? This is a training I did last week. So the entrepreneur is aware they have to save receipts for their business. And they want to come out of the gate with setting up QuickBooks Online and attaching the receipt and matching it to every single transaction. And they watched my training last week and they wrote down all the steps and they're going to do it. And they know exactly what to do. But guess what? They don't actually do it because it was about 4 steps too long for what could actually fit into their weekly to-do list. So then they just don't do it at all, right? Because that was too complicated. So what I explained last week was, in a perfect world, I'd love for you guys to have audit-proof books where every single transaction in QuickBooks Online has a receipt attached to it. However, the end result is that I want you saving your receipts. So I offered up the alternative of snap a picture of it and put it into Google Drive. Boom, you're done. That is keeping it simple. Now, as you get more, comfortable with QuickBooks Online, the process of attaching a receipt to a transaction will be simple for you. But when you're first starting out, the idea of snapping a receipt, loading it into the app, attaching it to the transaction, that's a couple of steps, and it's going to be more difficult for you to be consistent with it. So keep it simple. Snap the picture, throw it in Google Drive, right? That is the kind of things I'm talking about. And I think that some of the pushback that I got when I started promoting this live training today, this idea of, keeping it simple, was I posted saying we don't need 18 bank accounts. And that's really where I started to get the pushback and people saying, no, we do need 18 bank accounts. It's going to help with cash flow. And there were a lot of, comments sort of posting about profit first and the benefits of profit first. And I want to be really clear. I was not referring to profit first. I think that is a very strong system. I think it works for a lot of individuals when you follow it. Okay. Again, what I am talking about is the lack of consistency. And I think the lack of consistency comes when a process is too complicated. So if you are going to do profit first, you want to make sure you're actually following it. But if you are at a place in your business where you can't follow the system and you can't be consistent, then it's not going to work. So I want you to look at all of the processes in your business and say, okay, which are the ones that I'm not doing? Right? What is not getting done? What do I start my week with the intention of completing and then I don't actually do it? And then I want you to look at those tasks and I want you to ask yourself, is the process too complicated? Can it be simplified? And I'm going to venture to predict here that you're going to find that the things in your business that keep getting pushed to the back burner, they're getting pushed to the back burner because they're not simplified. Okay. When we take a look at accounting and we look at it through an entrepreneurial lens, right? Let's be honest about who we are as individuals. Entrepreneurs, we tend to be creatives. That's a very different side of the brain than the part that's going to thrive looking at balance sheets and profit and loss statements. So we really want to be able to take that process and just simplify it. And I want you guys to understand complicating something doesn't ensure that you're going to get results. You can be profitable and still keep your money system simplified. Okay. So here is another example. So we talked about, we don't need to have 18 bank accounts. If you want to have multiple bank accounts to be able to separate your money, that's great, as long as you are actually separating the money and you are paying attention to the transfers and making sure that they happen. I am all for that. My clients run on 3 to 4 bank accounts. That is our system. That is how we believe they are best able to manage their finances, but they are also utilizing us to ensure the consistency. So I'm just saying, when it comes to managing the number of bank accounts you have, we just want to make sure you're consistent. Whatever the system is, be consistent. So if you want to have 18 bank accounts and it's working for you, that is great. My message here is the system that you stick with is the right system. We have to be consistent in order to get results. And I happen to believe simplicity is the best way to remain consistent. But if you are able to have this very complicated system and you are dedicated to it and you are consistent, all the power to you. Then this training is not for you, right? Then that's fine. You have 18 bank accounts, you have a 32-step workflow, and it's working and you are consistent, more power to you. But if you are looking at your business and you are saying, hey, I haven't done this one task for 3 weeks now, I want you to take a look at that task and say, hey, am I putting it off because it's way too freaking complicated, right? Is that why it's not happening? And I'll give you an example in my business, right? I really wanted to have a podcast. And I love podcasts. I'm really into them. I listen to them all the time. And I wanted to jump on that bandwagon. And I had an entire process of how to do it and how to record it. And it was never happening. I mean, months were going on and I'm like, I'm not recording this podcast. And I finally said, how do I simplify this? And you know what? Hired a podcast manager to take care of it. And we now repurpose my live trainings and turn them into the podcast. Boom. That is how I simplified it, because my goal originally was to do my live, Facebook live and YouTube trainings, and then do a second piece of content of a podcast. Guys, that might have been way more effective, right? Putting out 2 original pieces of content each week. Very possible that would have majorly helped me scale to the next level. But guess what? I wasn't doing it. I wasn't consistent. So it wasn't working anyways. And I had to have a, look in the mirror moment and say, hey, for months now, you've been saying you're going to go live on Facebook and YouTube and record a podcast. You're not recording the podcast. So it's not working. So what can you commit to? And I said, well, I'm going to repurpose my Facebook Lives, because that's where I'm consistently showing up. I've formed that habit around doing my Facebook and YouTube Lives. So that's just a small example of showing how I went into something with a more complicated system of 2 original pieces of content a week and then said, I'm not doing it. I'm not remaining consistent. I'm going to change this to be more my speed. So I want you to look at all of the systems in your business and really say, where can I simplify so that I can ensure consistency? All right. So I think that's really important. And just coming back to recognizing that being complex, being complicated, having a complicated process doesn't mean that it's going to ensure efficacy. And I think as our businesses grow and scale, right, there's a lot of, I call it like shiny object syndrome. So a lot of people will be like, oh, my business is really scaling. My revenues have quadrupled. I need to update my systems and processes. And yes, I agree with you. Okay. We all know that saying, what got you here won't get you there, right? If you are now have $1 million business, you can't run it the same way you are running a 6-figure business. You do need to update your processes. But I don't want you to think now all of a sudden, because my company is so much bigger, I need to complicate my processes. No, I want you to look at everything through a lens of, how can I keep this simple? So if attaching a receipt to a specific transaction in QuickBooks isn't happening for you, you're not doing it, you're not being consistent, change the process. Throw it all in a Google Drive. Remember, our end result is simply that you're saving receipts, right? If having 18 bank accounts was your goal, but you're not making the transfers, you're not reconciling all 18 bank accounts, you're not managing the money that way, then guess what? You went in with the best of intentions, but you're not consistent. So the system isn't working for you, okay? And if your system works, great. But if it's not, please take a look and say, how can I simplify? When it comes to bank accounts, I believe in one bank account for all revenue deposits and all operational expenses to come out. I believe in a savings account for all taxes to be transferred out and saved each month. I also believe in what I call a hashtag goals savings account. And that is our anything big that we're saving up for. So maybe you really want to join a mastermind next year. We could put money in there every single month to save toward our hashtag goals, right? And then the fourth account I like to have is our nest egg. So I really believe that COVID was a wake up call for a lot of people, not just in the business world, but personally. A lot of people realized, shit, I don't have a nest egg. And when things got tough in COVID, it was a harsh reality for a lot of people. And the only benefit that I think came from it is people now realizing I need a nest egg. So I love to see a nest egg as the fourth account for a business owner. I used to pre COVID advise clients to have 3 months of operational costs in there and 3 months of your pay in there. Now I've upped that to 6. So that is what I believe when it comes to bank accounts, right? But if you're like, hey, I have 18 bank accounts and I want to deposit for all of my revenue. I want to deposit or a bank account for all of my revenue. I want a bank account for all of my payroll. I want a bank account for all of my operational expenses. I want a bank account for owner's draw, a bank account for taxes, so on and so forth, right? I think that is wonderful if you are disciplined enough to remain consistent and the system is working for you. The bottom line is a system is perfect if it's working for you. But if it's not, the entire takeaway of today, and I think I'm just kind of beating a dead horse here because this is the first time I've ever gotten pushback on anything I said. I didn't think saying simplicity is the key to profitability would get people to say I respectfully disagree. But since they did, I think I'm being a little overly sensitive and want to make sure I'm getting my point across. But I think that, if the system is actually working, that's great. I'm specifically talking about systems that aren't working for you. I just want you to look at them through a lens of how can I simplify this, right? And I'll give you another just personal example having nothing to do with business. So I every morning was getting up and making my kids a hot breakfast, and it was definitely complicating my mornings. And I realized I can make certain breakfast. I still wanted them to have a hot breakfast, but I could make certain things in advance. So instead of getting up and freshly making French toast, I could make French toast on a Sunday and reheat it all week. They're still getting a hot breakfast, but I simplified my morning. The end result was the same. My kids had a hot breakfast, but I didn't need the complication of in my head thinking I needed to make, and this is so dumb, I'm talking about French toast, but I'm just trying to get you guys in the mindset. I didn't need to make French toast fresh that morning. It was okay to make it on Sunday and warm it up throughout the week because we want to simplify. And I know as human beings, the more simple it is, the more likely you are to stay on track. Stop over complicating things, okay? Look at everything through the lens of keep it simple and sexy. How can we do that? What can you kiss in your company? KISS. Keep it simple and sexy. And tell me in the comments, I want to know what you guys think. What are you going to kiss today? Look at all of your processes. What can be simplified? What isn't working for you? How can you kiss it and make it all better? So I hope you guys enjoyed this today, and I look forward to getting